Hello, this is Kyra from the Magical Unicorn Project, and I'm here today with our next leading lady, Dr. Sherry Cooper, Chief Economist, and this is so exciting for me because you might not know this, but only 20% of economists are women, but a very small fraction, probably less than 5%, are actually chief economists. So it's a real pleasure to have Sherry here today. She's basically a unicorn in the financial industry. So thanks for being here, Sherry.
My pleasure.
So the first question I wanted to ask you was, what made you decide to be a chief economist? Because you probably didn't know any when you first, went down on that career path.
Not only had I never met an economist, I didn't even know what economics was. I mean, in my high school, public high school, nobody studied economics. So to be honest, the reason I took my first economics course was because I had a hole in my schedule at 10 o'clock and the choices of what are 10 o'clock classes, there was like a philosophy class, there was economics, and I thought, well, okay, why not? And I loved it. And the truth is that my professor, on my very first exam, wrote at the top of it, you have such an understanding for a mere beginner, you ought to become an economist. And the power of you ought to become an economist was just huge. I switched my major to economics, and the rest is history.
Where did you go from there? Like, did you have a desire to have children and do all of that, or were you really just career focused? Did you believe you could have it all?
I was always family oriented. I was married very young. It was my way of getting out of the house, to be honest. In those days, honestly, at least in my neighborhood with my dad, a woman who wasn't married, living alone, oh no, not happening. So, and I can tell you that my father, my father-in-law, my then husband, were not encouraging me to have a long-standing career. Oh yeah, you could work a few years before you had children, but after that, no way. And I wanted children.
Yeah.
I wanted it all.
Yeah.
And why not? Mm-hmm. Why not? But that's not to say that it's easy and that you don't make choices, and there's no such thing as work-life balance. You sometimes work your butt off and sometimes you play, right? But it can be done.
Have you ever had a moment in time where you were experiencing an emotional glass ceiling? And I'm curious about, what did you do to overcome that?
Oh, I have that all the time.
Good, me too.
I think it's human nature to be anxious about doing anything that's outside your comfort zone. And I give speeches, and what could be more outside of anyone's comfort zone? Public speaking is something that most people shy away from. Yes. Now, at least I can tell you I love doing it. Yeah. And so it comes naturally to me in some respects, but you gotta put the work in. I have to create my presentations. I have to decide what I should speak about and order my PowerPoints and I worry that something that I have no control over will happen. And sure enough, it does, right? Yes. I mean, I have every possible kind of mishap, given 30 years of giving presentations, has happened. And I've talked when I don't have a voice. I've fallen off stages. I've fallen on stages. I've had fire drills in the middle of presentations. As well, when I'm speaking to smaller groups or I'm at the board table, there are people that want to, stump the Economist. And these are generally people that get some kind of pleasure in watching someone sweat. And it's so easy to fear that and make yourself almost tongue-tied in answering. And that's the part that is the most difficult, and to be able to say, I don't know, if you don't know. Yes. And we all struggle with that. Fear of failure. Yes. It's the biggest.
I'm curious about, in the corporate world, managing a bunch of men, especially, back in the day, what would have that been like? I can imagine some of them probably didn't love that so much.
You bet, you bet. And of course, the older I became, the easier it was, both for the men and me. You know what I mean? Like if you're young and you have a man that reports to you who is much older than you, it's a tension. And at one stage of my career, I was not only chief economist, but I was also the head of fixed income for Burns Fry. And so the bond salesmen, all men, reported to me. And this was in the early 90s. Okay. And there were some tough days, and they were, many of them could become disrespectful. And I fired a guy for throwing a telephone at me. That back when they were, on the trading desk on the phones, and I told him that he had to cancel a sale because he was selling too much to just one client. It was a very hot deal, and we had to, spread it around. And he threw the phone at me. And fortunately, I ducked, but I fired him on the spot. He was our #1 salesman. And do you know, the powers that be, the CEO of the company, said, you can't do that. And I said...
He said that to you?
Yes.
You can't do that? You can't fire him?
You can't fire him.
Oh, wow.
And I actually had to say him or me.
So were most of your mentors, I would assume that you would have mentors that were men, right? Because there probably were no women in those higher positions.
Well, once I left university, being an all-women's college, we did have professors that were women, not just women, but there I had mentors. But and later, yes, were men.
Okay.
Typically older, a good deal older, and they were wonderful. Yeah. Just wonderful. The thing is, though, that makes me sad is that even now, young women, well-educated, well-trained, hard-working, badass women are still confronted by so many of these things. Maybe not, it's not as overt as it used to be, but it's still there.
Yeah. So one last thing before I let you go, what is a word of advice that you would like to leave the next generation of women with?
Well, there's so much. I guess the thing I always said to my son, so this is gender neutral, which is if you think you can, you can. Yeah. And it's a head game, right? You gotta put it in your head that you can do something and believe it. If you can conceive of this goal, and I write my goals down.
Yeah, I do too.
And you conceive of it, you write it down, and then you believe in it. Yeah. Then you can achieve it. And I do love mentoring and sponsoring women. I love young women who've got a burn in their gut and want to be great at what they do. Yes. And that to me is extremely fulfilling, is to watch their growth and to help a little bit along the way.